Please welcome Loretta as she tells her story.
Hi everyone. First, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. So my name again is Loretta Bowling. I became a patient advocate and started petitions on change.org after my son's life was risked by mail order pharmacy. And also recently we were forced to mail order pharmacy. I put all that I have into this advocacy because I believe with all of my heart that lives are at risk. I thought my advocacy when I first began was going to be just about temperatures and mail order pharmacy. But after I uncovered the rapid decline in our pharmaceutical care that goes far beyond just temperatures, it's much more. I found out that mail order pharmacy is very loosely regulated and that there's very little accountability when errors occur that causes patients to risk their lives. Before I begin, I would like to ensure everyone that I'm not against mail order pharmacy. I understand that some patients may prefer mail order pharmacy, and as long as the patients accept the many risks that come along with mail order pharmacy, then they should be allowed to use it. But mail order pharmacy is far from the safest way for patients to receive their medications. Patients should always have the options in their coverage to get the medications the safest way through the hands of their trusted pharmacist that has earned their business, not to be forced to terminate the crucial face-to-face relationship with their pharmacist or the mailman. Although initially I'm going to discuss medication temperatures, it's crucial again to know that the temperatures are just one of over 100 issues that I've realized with mail order pharmacy. So I'm a patient advocate for thousands of people now, but just as important, I am the mother of a child whose life depends on medications every 12 hours. I believe with all my heart that this rapid decline that we are seeing in pharmaceutical care, if we do not make a U-turn now, that patients, taxpayers, entire communities, our nation will suffer. Our son had a liver transplant at the age of 2 after he contracted the flu. His liver failed quickly, and prior to adding our son onto the transplant list, we would have to agree to give our son medications every 12 hours for the rest of his life. His medications would help his body and keep his body from rejecting the transplanted organ that we received from our hero, a 3-year-old little girl. After receiving his gift of life, I promised myself I would never take my son's life for granted, and that I would take the best care of his transplanted liver, not just for him, but the gift of life that would live on inside of him. I still feel emotional and I tear up every time I get to go through his closet because he's outgrown his clothes. We will be celebrating 7 years next month of gifted life. When I look at the medication bottle and I see all of you in white coats, I hope that I can inspire you to do the same. When I see the medication bottle, I do not just see a bottle. I see his life. Before and immediately after transplant was a terrifying emotional and physical roller coaster ride that I don't ever want to have to relive. There were multiple visits to the ICU. He was put on a ventilator. Sometimes when toddlers go through traumatic events, they often have to relearn all of their little milestones again. My son had to learn to walk and talk again. You know, when you see those moments a second time, they're just cherished and you hold them so much closer to your heart. I say that today because if regulators, PBMs, and mail order pharmacists had to see the struggles and the fighting that some patients do for their lives, then maybe they would understand why we do not want to have to risk all of the delays or medications losing potency or being shipped to the wrong address or being stolen. About a month and a half later of being discharged from the hospital, I decided to try mail order pharmacy for his life-saving medications. It was the summer of 2012. Here in Missouri, we were in a record-breaking heat wave. On the day that my son's medications were delivered, I remember the temperatures of 102 and the heat index was about 115. His liquid oral transplant medications arrived in only a bag, and at that time I was worried about the outside temperatures. But from what I know now, the inside of the back of the delivery truck is what I should have been most concerned about. Many people, when they first see their life-saving medications in just a bag on a 100-degree day, you get the feeling in your stomach that something's just not right, but we just brush that off and say, you know what, someone is surely making sure that this is safe. We are wrong. Come to find out, unless your medication requires refrigeration, after speaking with several mail-order pharmacists, this is how they ship all room temperature medications, including our child's liquid oral medications. Not long after the shipment, the transplant nurse called. Our son's labs were elevated and he was being admitted to the hospital. The life that we just fought so hard for was at risk again. The harsher medications that they wanted us to use could risk his life. But if we did nothing, then we could also risk losing the transplanted liver, and another may not be available. I began thinking about the medication that was delivered, and I told myself to never again use mail order pharmacy unless it was proven safe. So here I stand today. We were forced to mail order pharmacy, just as millions of patients are across our nation. I know that the pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs like Express Scripts, CVS Caremark, OptumRx, they don't like it when we say the word forced. But for millions of patients across our nation who cannot afford to pay 100% out of pocket unless they use that mail order pharmacy, that's force. Because most patients cannot afford to pay the 100%. Sadly, CVS Caremark tried to say that the hospital pharmacist was an inappropriate place for us to fill our medications. I argue that the hospital pharmacist is the best place for me to fill my son's medications. I believe that sadly, because 3 PBMs own about 80% of the market, and as a health insurance agent, finding another plan that is not engaging in this unethical business practice is almost unrealistic. I will never forget the day that the hospital pharmacist told me that my son's medications would no longer be able to be filled there. I was terrified after what we had just been through. I was actually scheduled to have heart surgery that Monday. I called in the medications on Wednesday. Friday I went to pick them up, and here they're telling me I have to get my son's medications mailed to me. I almost canceled my heart surgery that I had already put off 3 times. So I paced the halls outside of the pharmacy, and they decided to work a deal with me so I could just pay cash for my medications. To console my concerns, afterwards I talked to the mail order pharmacy, and I was informed by several representatives, do not worry, we will ice pack it. I even stayed on the phone with a mail order pharmacist for an hour, was reassured that it would be packed with ice. It arrived on a 90-degree day with nothing. I contacted the mail order pharmacy, and they told me that it was safe to give my son the medications I did. I probably would not be standing here today if 2 weeks after that shipment, my son's liver transplant labs came back high again. So when questioning the mail order pharmacy about the safety of my son's meds, I said to go ahead and give them to him, and that putting an ice pack next to my son's medications on a hot day could cause humidity to build up in the bottle, and studies have shown that that can cause degradation. So I asked, what about the instructions, on our medication bottles that say excursions permitted from 59 to 86 degrees? Excursions permitted. Doesn't that tell the mail order pharmacy that medication should be kept between 59 and 86 degrees during shipping? For the mail order pharmacist, I was told no, but the manufacturer does the testing, told me to discard my son's medications, and that they could no longer uphold the integrity of medications after they were shipped outside of these proven safe temperature ranges. It was obvious then that someone wasn't telling me the truth. So I asked, where do you get your guidance from? They claimed USP, but I reached out to USP, and I actually received written guidance from the person who writes the recommendations for medications in transit, he actually said that the mail-order pharmacy should be adhering to the manufacturer's proven safe guidelines as written on the label. I made sure even seeing the same label. Yes, they agreed that I was seeing the exact same label. Mail-order pharmacy should be adhering to the guidelines at 59 to 86 degrees. That includes during excursions. We obviously know that's not happening today. You know, there are studies here in Missouri that show that the temperatures of mailboxes can actually reach up to 140 degrees on a 100-degree day. I don't want to put my son's medications in those temperatures, and I don't want any other child or patient's medications left sitting in these conditions unprotected. I'm very thankful to the integrity of USP, and if I was sitting here in a white coat, that's one place that I would definitely want to work one day or to be at or be part of. I had to find out how hot the trucks were getting. It was only after I found a UPS driver and another petitioner who started a petition after her husband actually suffered from a heat stroke and almost died from the back of the truck. So the UPS petition isn't for the front of the trucks, it's for the back, because the backs are hot and closed, they're metal. The temperatures can climb to 170 to 180 degrees. It's just, together, me and Teresa, you know, we have two petitions, one common goal. The lack of air conditioning puts not only the driver's lives at risk, but the lives of the people depending on life-saving medications. After mentioning the conditions of the hot trucks to the mail-order pharmacy, I was told that they could ship to a local CVS, but when I asked, are you going to ship it the same way, in the same non-temperature controlled vehicle, when they said yes, I said no. You know, how is that any better? One mail-order pharmacist's response was that she could not control UPS. I felt as though the PBMs and the mail-order pharmacy, the pharmacists, were trying to make me turn a blind eye to the obvious. They were asking me to risk my son's life for their profits. I refused to turn the blind eye. I refused to allow them to force patients to risk their lives. I reached out to FDA. Surely the FDA is overseeing the medications in transport from the mail-order pharmacy to the patient's door. I was shocked when I found out they're not regulating that. The state boards of pharmacies are supposed to. It's very loosely regulated. There are some states that don't even have a law relating to medications in transport to patient stores from mail-order pharmacy. So I asked my son's doctor to file an appeal. He did not mind at all. But CVS Caremark had denied the doctor's appeal for us to get my son's life-saving medications the safest way. I made 30 to 40 calls, begging them, please let me protect my son's medications. I filed complaints with the State Board of Pharmacy and the Department of Insurance. And in the meantime, thanks to Mike Colombo's team at Fox News here in St. Louis, Missouri, the day after he reached out, the following day we were able to get our medications from the Children's Hospital again. How many patients have access to media? I have connected with thousands now with similar issues across our nation. The Department of Insurance sent the complaint to the U.S. Department of Labor, who stated that this will fall under ERISA's law, which is a law for self-insured plans. He states that since the employer and PBM were not breaking ERISA's law by mandating mail order, that there was nothing that the U.S. Department of Labor could do. Word for word, the representative told me that although the forcing a mail-order pharmacy may be unethical, it is not illegal. Anything that is forced upon patients that is unethical and risks the lives of patients should be illegal. If not, then we must make it illegal. I continue to follow with the State Board of Pharmacy. So Missouri is researching ways to regulate the temperatures of mail-order pharmacy. And for those of you from the State Board of Pharmacy who are doing that, thank you. But they did search across all 50 states and they couldn't find a law to mirror to ensure the safety of our medications during transport. I hope with all I have that when you change the laws, that you will change them to protect patients and not corporate profits. I hope that the State Board of Pharmacy will take this issue seriously because their decision may influence other state boards across our nation. Our state boards need to be aware that they hold the lives of the youngest of patients to the oldest of patients in their hands. Missouri has a great law that states that the Miller Pharmacy should adhere to manufacturer's guidelines or USP guidelines. I'm extremely concerned that changing the law may allow only the protection of refrigerated medications, which we are already currently trying to protect. So I realized that the Miller Pharmacy were the only ones that said it's safe to ship my son's medications so carelessly. Well, almost the only ones. 20 years ago, a journalist from a managed care magazine questioned the concern of our medications being shipped in a bag. As the journalist mentioned, patients who had received frozen insulin. Also, the journalist referred to a study showing that the trucks can reach up to 170 degrees. When PCMA, the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association representative spoke about this issue in reply to the journalist, he states that our medications, word for word, he says, they don't get any hotter than if you walked out of the pharmacy and put them on the dashboard of your car. Please don't take this as sarcasm. This is honesty and reality. There are recipes for cooking on your dashboard of your car in the summer heat. I don't want to put my son's medications in those conditions. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention states when temperatures outside range from 80 to 100 degrees, the temperatures inside of a car parked in direct sunlight can quickly climb between 130 to 172 degrees. 20 years ago from that article, I stand here today, and a hero and NPR reporter, Alex Smith from Kansas City, Missouri, shared our story. In that report, a pharmacy professor, who I will also call a hero for speaking the truth, said that yes, my son's medications could have been risked by the high heat. When I heard that as a mom, I cried because I wondered, did I do something that risked my son's life? Now, sadly, PCMA, their consultants and the PBMs, their mail-order pharmacies gave no apologies for shipping the medications far outside of the proven safety guidelines. Instead, PCMA stated that the mail-order pharmacies adhere to the FDA guidelines during transport. That's deception, because the FDA doesn't regulate mail-order pharmacies from the mail-order pharmacy to the patient store. Again, the state boards of pharmacy is supposed to, there's not one law for the FDA to regulate the mail-order pharmacies and shipping to the patient store. So the FDA does regulate manufacturers. They require sensors whenever they ship the medications to the pharmacy. An expert medical chemist stated that the best way to ensure the integrity of drug products is to maintain the stability of temperatures and eliminating humidity. He mentioned a couple other things such as vibrations. If per PCMA, PBMs, and mail-order pharmacy, if temperatures do not matter, why are they listed on the label? Why not just completely eliminate the section in our pharmaceutical textbooks that teach our pharmacists the crucial importance of maintaining the stability of medications when it comes to temperatures or humidity? Why not just forget the fact that many pharmacists are taught that whenever medications are in these temperature ranges, that stability in the chemistry of medications can change, not just at a slow rate, but once it reaches certain temperature extremes, it changes exponentially. I learned the hard way that temperatures do matter. Protecting our medications from these extremes can be life or death. Why make our independent pharmacists discard all their stocks when their temperatures are out of the manufacturer's proven safe ranges, even for just a few hours? Or they'll get heavily fined. I've now connected with patients who have received capsules melted, insulin's frozen, medication ineffective, but when replaced with the medications that have not been subjected to the temperature extremes, their conditions improve. It's obvious that profits are coming before patients, and I refuse to leave the standard of care behind for my child. So after starting the petitions and after starting my advocacy, I learned about the rapid closures of our trusted pharmacies. The ones that have worked extremely hard to earn our business. So I started another petition to make sure that they're paid fairly. The current system allows for the same company that determines the reimbursements to our pharmacies to pay their own mail order pharmacy and retail pharmacies more than what they're paying our independent and community pharmacies. Sadly, I've heard many pharmacists say, I don't want to get rich. All I want to do is be able to serve my patients, to be able to take care of my family and take care of the community. After learning about this, I decided to look up to see how much the PBM reimbursed our own mail order pharmacy versus how much they reimbursed our trusted pharmacist. I was alarmed to find out they reimbursed themselves $178 for the same exact medication that they reimbursed our trusted pharmacy about $20 for. I could have went and paid cash for that same medication, $24. It's why there is a PBS news headline that reads, why a patient paid $240 copay for a $40 drug. It's the reason why many patients today are going without their life-saving medications, because they do not know that when they use an independent pharmacy, that the cost of the medications could be much lower, sometimes a tenth of the cost. Another study cited by CBS states that in Ohio they found that the same inhaler is being sold for $11.99 at one pharmacy and $1,136 at a different pharmacy. The article goes on to say, you would expect when you go to the bigger pharmacies that you get a better deal, but our research found actually that the smaller independent pharmacies usually really consistent offer cheaper options for the same medications. We must ensure that we speak to our legislators, that we let them know not to fall in the trap of believing that when they buy in bulk, that they're saving us money. It's no wonder why it appears that the PBMs are trying to close down our independent pharmacies. Without independent pharmacies, the price gouging that we're hearing about in states like Ohio, Kentucky, Texas, this would not be known. So we must demand transparency from pharmacy benefit managers across our nation. It's hard to believe today that we are seeing our beloved pharmacists on the news channels across our nation as shadow figures on television, as they are afraid of speaking out that they will get audited out of business by the same PBMs. Our pharmacists are trying to raise awareness about these issues that they see their patients facing every day as they walk away from the pharmacy counter empty-handed. When these patients walk away from that counter without their medications that their lives depend on, many times it's nothing other than the price gouging that PBMs do as they sit on the Fortune 50 list with revenues in the billions. It doesn't have to be this way. Now let's talk about adherence. Recently a study indicated that 90% of physicians state that the reason for the lack of adherence is price of medications or the patient's inability to afford medications. Thanks to excellent reporting, as another person I recently just mentioned, that it's obvious now that PBMs are playing a role in the high cost of drugs. Many have found it's cheaper to pay cash versus to pay their copay. Other patients may decide to go to Canada or Mexico or use discount cards. Is this the future of pharmaceutical care that you want for your loved ones? We are in the USA. When we have insurance cards, we shouldn't have to go to Canada or Mexico to receive our medications. We shouldn't have to use discount cards when we have insurance or pay cash because it's cheaper than using our insurance, as our premiums are already high. Sadly, because of a value-based system, PBMs are often rewarding their own pharmacies with much higher reimbursements when they claim adherence. If the high cost of drugs is part of the reason for adherence, then should they not be penalized for that? In their eyes, if they ship us the medications, that means that we're going to take them. What they don't tell our legislators is that this can also mean that patients end up with tables full of waste that go unused while other patients die. They die from not being able to afford the same medications that are just getting thrown away. When I see these photos, I see our tax dollars. I just see thousands of dollars on these tables. Who's going to pay that? Who pays for that? No, we all do. All taxpayers do. Whenever it happens in our programs like Medicaid and Medicare. The face-to-face relationship with our pharmacists is a crucial one. It's crucial for our elderly, for caregivers like me, for patients with learning disabilities. I recently connected with a patient who received blood thinners from a mail order pharmacy with the label reading, "Take as needed." For many of you, you probably already know what's going to happen next. So sadly, she had a stroke. She's unable to express her thoughts. Her husband and daughter are now her caregivers, and her husband recently stated that he might have to sell his home. He wants the ability to use the pharmacy that he trusts, but sadly, in his coverage, he doesn't have that option. He would have to pay 100%. He wonders if he would have had that option, if the outcomes for his family would be any different. I will always wonder the same for my son. When your life depends on medications, a trusted pharmacist is just as crucial as choosing a heart surgeon for your heart surgery. You guys are very special. Just like business, trust should be earned, not forced. I have a feeling that in their adherence that PBMs don't include the prior authorization process that often leads to pain and suffering and sometimes death. They don't tell our regulators about the pain and suffering for patients like Brooke, and I selected Brooke because when I found out I was going to be speaking in front of many college students. Brooke is a college student, and she's about the same age as many of you all. She's fighting a battle with cancer. The PBM spent 2 months denying the medication that her physician felt would be the best for her. But once received, the medication ended up not working. No way to predict this though without trying. So then they had to wait another 2 months to get approval for the next medication. During this time, Brooke went into renal failure from such progression of the disease. Another time she experienced a delay in getting her life-saving medications. So she found out that they were at a sorting facility. She drove 30 minutes to the shipping center, and it was a literal warehouse. She had low functioning, and here she is digging through these packages, searching for her chemo medications. Guys, this could be any of us. It doesn't have to be this way. So Brooke and another child cancer patient had a similar experience when they were at a hospital and they were ready to begin their infusion, and the staff realized that the medication wasn't there. The medication must be shipped from the PBM's mail order pharmacy. In the case of the toddler, the medication was there at the hospital, but they had to wait 2 days for the medication to be mailed from the PBM's preferred pharmacy. They couldn't use the medication. So that means that toddler experienced a 2-day delay in cancer treatment. And I just wonder, if that was your child, how would you feel during that 2 days? Please just stop for a minute, and pause and just think about these patients. Is this the future that you want of pharmaceutical care? My son's transplant nurse is also a coordinator who saves the lives of children on the transplant list. She states that patients spend hours each week on the phone trying to resolve these issues with the PBM's forced mail order pharmacy. She states that, this doesn't make sense. The medications that at one time the doctor could write a prescription for and we could have in our hands in 30 minutes is now taking 5 to 7 days for processing and delivery. Many physicians and nurses have stated the same. The delays also occur when a patient's being discharged from the hospital. And when there's discharge and delays from the hospital, that puts these patients at an increased risk of infections. I believe that no one is truly tracking the number of patients complaining about the damaged medications, stolen medications, and the ER visits that occur when patients don't receive their medications on time. I am certain that the many patients that are complaining of these issues that lead to a lack of adherence, these aren't counted in their value-based system. I came across a news report in one city in Tennessee that found that the main place that opioids go missing is during delivery. They cited 3,200 pills missing in one city alone. Who is holding these mail-order pharmacies accountable when this happens? I know that our independent pharmacies would be heavily fined if just one bottle of pills went missing. Now, mail thefts are on the rise in different areas that are even at greater risk of mail thefts. A report cited in Business Wire cited 11 million packages stolen in a year. How many of those were medications? As PBMs cause the closures of many of our independent pharmacies in rural areas, where will these patients go when they need an emergency fill? When packages are damaged, stolen, or medications or when our medications are not used, they're just stored on these tables. Again, we all pay. And there's a double standard. It's time for the special treatment to stop. Most of the PBMs motor pharmacies that we are being forced to are one-star pharmacies on pages like Better Business Bureau, the Consumer Reports pages, and pages like Yelp. Would you want to have to use a one-star surgeon? In pharmacy, one wrong move could be a patient's life. I don't want my son or any patient being forced to a one-star pharmacy. I want to be able to access my son's medications without any risk. I have never had my son's life-saving medications lost, delayed, stolen, or shipped to the wrong address. I never want to have to risk that, and nor do I want to be forced to. Patients, caregivers, entire communities are seeing their local community pharmacists struggle for their survival, and we are all begging for help. The claims to cost savings from PBMs appears to be a corner cutting that's risking patients' lives. I believe what PBMs are doing for patients today is some of the worst injustices that's being done in our country. Lastly, so in closing, I often hear from patients, thank you so much for fighting for me. I want to fight about these issues, but I'm too sick to fight. So I have a special request for all of you today. Will you please help me stand up for the patients that say that I'm too sick to fight? These are common sense issues, but they have real impact. I urge you to not leave this room the same when you walked in today. I urge you to walk out of here with a sense of empowerment and to say that we are not going to allow this to happen to patients. We're not going to allow this to happen to our loved ones. We're not going to allow this to happen to the future of our pharmaceutical care. Let's not make this Republican or Democrat issue, because the lobbyists don't make it a Republican or Democratic issue. These issues are common sense. Now, the lobbyists may have their money and these companies may have their money, but we have our votes, and across our nation there are a variety of advocacy groups that are uniting about different issues related to pharmaceutical care. If we all unite, they can't stop us. They will have no choice but to listen to us. I want to say thank you to all of those who support me, to the pharmacists who are fighting so hard, not only for your profession, but for your patients. Thank you to the patients who share your stories. Together, we will win this. We cannot give up no matter how long or how hard. Please help me just make sure that patients will be protected, not profits. Thank you so much.
I don't know how to follow this through. Thank you, Greta. You were amazing. Okay, please, I think standing ovation for Loretta. So much. That's what you're here for today. That's what you're here for. Transparency, people's lives, your destiny. That's what you're here for.
After I was done, I realized that there were two parts to my speech that I had left off. One was that I was told when PBMs are questioned about these issues or temperatures or delays that they will try to say that this is just a 0.001% chance of occurrence. When in reality, when they ship out 1 billion packages, that's 100,000 people's lives at risk. Who in America can get by with inflicting that much pain and suffering and risking of lives? 0.0001% may not seem like it's a lot until it's your child, your patient's life that you've been working for years, or your loved one. I believe many of these issues are underreported or not even reported at all. I believe that few realize that their child's medications or their medications that they're going to receive this summer and only a bag, they're not going to be warned that their child's medications could lose effectiveness in the extremely high temperatures. What would happen to me if I decided to ignore the manufacturer's guidelines and put my child's medications in those in improper temperature ranges? What would happen to me if I delayed my son's medications? Again, I am tired of the double standard. There was also another story of a woman who, she is pregnant right now, and she has been without the medication that she needs to prevent her from going into labor. Sadly, she's been waiting on this medication for more than 7 days, and because they are mandating that she receives this medication by mail, it just doesn't make sense. I appreciate your support, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you.